Everyone was laughing at the dinner table like nothing was wrong. My mom passed the mashed potatoes. My dad was sipping his drink. Then, out of nowhere, he looked at me and said, "We're giving your room to your brother. You can figure something out." I didn't say a word for a second. I just looked around the table, at my mom who didn't even flinch, at my brother who looked a little too happy, and at the family I clearly didn't belong to anymore. Then I smiled and said, "Good thing I bought a house yesterday." They all went silent. No one spoke, because no one knew if I was lying or telling the truth. Truth is, I didn't know either, but that one sentence changed my entire life. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Emily Carter. I was 17 that night, and what I said at the table about buying a house, that was a complete lie. I had no money, no job, no plan. I was just tired of being invisible in my own home. I wanted to shock them, and I did. After dinner, I went to my room and closed the door. I could hear them laughing again, like it didn't matter, like I didn't matter. I sat on my bed, staring at the wall, wondering how I'd make that lie real. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I woke up before everyone else. I packed a small bag, just clothes, my school books, and a little photo of my grandma. She was the only one who ever made me feel like I was worth something. She passed away 2 years ago, and after that, nothing felt like home anymore. I didn't even wait for the sun to rise fully. I walked out the front door without saying goodbye. No one stopped me. No one called out my name. Maybe they thought I was bluffing. Maybe they didn't care. But I kept walking, heart pounding, telling myself over and over, "You said you bought a house, so go find one." I had exactly $62 in my wallet. I knew it wouldn't be enough for anything serious. But I also knew I couldn't go back. My pride wouldn't let me. That one sentence at dinner had trapped me, and now I had to survive it. I went to school that day, pretending everything was normal. I smiled at my classmates, laughed at dumb jokes, ate lunch alone like always. But in my head, I was making a plan. I needed a job, any job, something I could do after school, something that paid cash. I asked around quietly, and a girl named Lisa told me her cousin worked at a diner and they might be hearing. I didn't wait. After school, I walked straight to that diner. It was small, old, and smelled like burnt toast. But the owner, Mr. Hank, looked tired and desperate. When I asked if he was hearing, he looked me up and down and said, "You ever worked before?" I shook my head. "No, but I learned fast." He sighed and handed me an apron. "Start with dishes, don't break anything." That was it. I had a job. $5 an hour, paid in cash at the end of every shift. It wasn't much, but it was something. I started going there every day after school. I worked late, came back to school smelling like grease, and used the gym showers to clean up. No one noticed. No one cared. I still had no place to stay. For the first 3 nights, I slept in the back room of the diner. Mr. Hank didn't know. I made sure I was out before he came in and came back late after he left. On the 4th night, though, he caught me. I thought he'd fire me. Instead, he just sighed again and said, "You're lucky I sleep like a rock. There's a cot in the storage room, use it, but keep it clean." I almost cried, not because of the cot, but because someone finally gave me a little kindness. I worked harder after that, learned to wait tables, took extra shifts, saved every single dollar. Every night I looked up cheap places for rent. Most were way out of my range, but one day I found a tiny room for $200 a month. It was basically a box with a window, but it had a lock, and it was mine. After 2 months of non-stop work, I paid the first month's rent. I moved in with nothing but my bag, my grandma's photo, and a second-hand blanket Lisa gave me when she found out. It wasn't a house. Not yet. But I kept telling myself, "You didn't lie. You just spoke your future too early." In the middle of all this, I started watching videos about business. I didn't understand most of it, but I kept watching. I borrowed a library card and read books about starting side hustles. I saw people my age selling handmade crafts online. I thought, why not me? I started with keychains. I used my tips to buy some supplies, stayed up at night making little pieces, and sold them to kids at school. I made $30 the first week, then $60, then $90. It wasn't huge, but it was mine. Slowly, my lie started becoming a little less like a lie. I was paying my own rent. I was feeding myself. I was making money. I hadn't gone back home, not even once. I knew if I did, they'd act like nothing happened, like it was no big deal. But to me, it was everything. People started asking, "How are you doing all this alone?" I smiled and said, "I told my family I had a house. I didn't, so I had to go build one." This was just the beginning. I had no idea what was coming next, but I had already crossed the line, and there was no turning back. I used to think strength came from muscles or from loud voices that filled rooms, but I was wrong. Real strength is sleeping on a hard floor, eating one meal a day, and still waking up with hope in your heart. Real strength is working double shifts at a diner, smiling at rude customers, then staying up all night just to make handmade keychains that might not even sell. That was my life at 17. I didn't have a safety net. No one was coming to rescue me. My parents didn't call, not once, not even to check if I was okay. But you know what? That silence helped me more than their voices ever did, because every day I had no choice but to survive, to build something out of nothing. My little keychain hustle slowly started to grow. One day, a girl from another school messaged me on Instagram asking if I could make a custom set for her birthday party. That was my first real order. She paid $45 up front, and I made 12 custom name keychains overnight. She loved them, posted about it, tagged me. That changed everything. More people started messaging. Small orders at first, $10 here, $20 there, but the DMs kept coming. I didn't have a website, just an Instagram page and a lot of energy. I kept working at the diner, but I reduced my shifts and put more time into making products and packaging them. I bought brown paper bags, handwritten thank you notes, and even cute little ribbons from the dollar store. People liked that it felt personal. But while things were picking up online, school was a mess. I was barely sleeping, constantly tired and behind on homework. My teachers noticed. Some gave me trouble. Others just looked at me with pity. One teacher, Mr. Dawson, pulled me aside after class one day and said, "Emily, you look like you haven't slept in a week." I just nodded and said, "I'm trying to buy my first house." He laughed, thinking it was a joke. I didn't. That night, I sat in my tiny rented room, looking around. There were clothes in a pile, keychain supplies on the floor, half-eaten noodles in a cup, and my math textbook lying open on the bed. I remember thinking, is this what building a life looks like? Because it feels like falling apart. But I kept going. I had no other option. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. Mr. Hank, the diner owner, called me into his office. I thought I was in trouble. Instead, he handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. He shrugged. "Tips people left for you over the last month. I figured you could use it." I opened it. $318. I almost cried right there. That was more money than I'd seen in one place in months. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me," he said. "You earned it." I walked out of that diner that night feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, seen. Not as someone's daughter, not as someone's burden, just as me. With that money, I bought better supplies. Keychains turned into bracelets, bracelets into custom kits. I started filming short videos of my process, simple time lapses of me making designs, packing orders, smiling at the end. I added voiceovers, telling little bits of my story. One of those videos went viral. 300,000 views, hundreds of comments. People weren't just buying my products, they were supporting my story. Your story inspires me. I left home too. Watching you makes me feel less alone. I don't even need a keychain, but I bought one because I believe in you. Those comments were like fuel. I stayed up late reading everyone. I wrote back to as many as I could. I told them thank you. I told them I was still learning, and they told me to keep going. Then one day, something happened that shook me. I was walking to school and saw my mom's car drive past. She didn't stop. She didn't slow down, but I saw her face, and she definitely saw mine. That moment hit me harder than I expected. I had told myself I didn't care, that I was over it, but seeing her and feeling nothing in return, that scared me. I went to school distracted, messed up a test, forgot a customer order. Everything felt off. That night, I lay in bed thinking, did they ever miss me? Did they ever talk about me at the dinner table again? Or was I just erased? I almost picked up my phone to text my dad, but I stopped. Because I remembered why I left. I remembered the silence at the table, the way they treated me like a guest in my own home, the way no one stood up for me, not even when I clearly needed them. So instead, I opened my notes app and wrote something that would later become the quote on my business card. Sometimes, you have to leave home to find out where your heart truly belongs. A few days later, I received a message from someone named Rachel. She ran a small boutique in another state and said she loved my products. She wanted to sell them in her store. It wasn't a big order, just 30 bracelets, but it felt like a dream. My first wholesale client. I worked nonstop for 3 nights, packed everything perfectly, printed my first ever shipping label. When I dropped the box off at the post office, the clerk smiled and said, "First business order." I nodded. "Good luck, kid," she said. I walked out of there feeling like I owned the world. I didn't realize then that I was slowly building the life I had lied about at the dinner table. I didn't have a house yet, but I had freedom. I had money. I had a dream. And most importantly, I had myself. One night, while checking my orders, I got another DM, this one from someone I didn't expect. My little brother. He simply wrote, "Hey, Dad saw your videos. He says you should come home. He's proud of you." I stared at that message for a long time. My hands were shaking. For a second, I thought I might cry, not because I missed them, but because I finally realized something. I didn't need to go back. I wasn't that girl at the dinner table anymore. I was Emily Carter, 17 years old, business owner, survivor. And my story had only just begun. By the time I turned 18, I had shipped over 500 orders, opened a small online store, and saved just enough to dream a little bigger. I still lived in that tiny room with the peeling walls and the broken heater, but it felt more like mine than the bedroom I grew up in. I had a mini whiteboard where I tracked my orders, a second-hand desk for my crafting supplies, and a shoebox full of handwritten notes from customers who said my story inspired them. That shoebox was worth more to me than anything else I owned. But independence, it's not always pretty. There were nights I skipped dinner just to afford shipping labels. Days when my hands cramped from working too long. I missed out on parties, school events, even sleep. But I didn't complain. This was the life I chose when I said I'd bought a house. That one lie had become my truth, but keeping it alive came with a cost. And then came taxes. It sounds funny now, but when I got my first message from a customer asking if I had a business license, I panicked. I had no idea how any of that worked. I didn't even know if I was legal. All I knew was how to make keychains and pack orders with a thank you note. The rest, total mystery. So I did what I always did. I Googled it. Every night after work, I'd sit on my bed with my laptop, reading articles about LLCs, permits, taxes, and online regulations. Most of it sounded like a foreign language, but slowly I learned. I went to the local library and asked the lady at the front desk if they had any books on starting a business. She smiled and said, "We've got better free workshops. They're held every Tuesday." I showed up that week wearing my cleanest clothes and a notebook full of questions. I was the youngest person there by at least 10 years, but I didn't care. I sat in the front row and wrote everything down. When the speaker, a woman named Sharon, asked if anyone had started a business already, I raised my hand. "What do you sell?" she asked. "Keychains, bracelets, mostly handmade stuff. I also share my story online." She raised her eyebrows. "That's not just a business, that's a brand." I didn't know what a brand was, but that night I searched it up. And just like that, my mindset shifted. I wasn't just selling cute things, I was selling a message, a story, my story, and that gave everything I did a new purpose. I started updating my packaging, designed a small logo using a free app, changed my Instagram bio to "built from a lie, growing with the truth." People loved it. Soon I was getting repeat customers. People would message me saying, "I still have the first keychain you made," or "I bought this for my daughter who's going through something." That meant everything to me, because I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was helping others survive too. But just when I thought things were finally stable, something happened. The building I lived in got sold. One afternoon, I came home to find a notice taped to my door. "You have 30 days to vacate the property." Just like that, everything I built was on the line again. I felt my throat tighten. Where would I go? I had some savings, but not enough for a proper apartment. I considered asking someone for help, maybe Lisa, maybe Mr. Hank, but something in me said no. I had to figure it out. That night, I stayed up searching for rentals again. Prices had gone up. Options were fewer. Then I saw something, a garage studio, small, unfinished, but private. $350 a month, cash only, no contract. It was a risk, but I took it. The place was cold, had no kitchen, and smelled like oil. But it had a roof and a door that locked. I moved in with my things in 2 backpacks. No one helped. No one even knew. I remember sitting on the concrete floor the first night, holding my grandma's photo and whispering, "I'm still trying. I promise." It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. A week later, I made a video tour of the space and posted it online with the caption, "From sleeping in a diner to building a brand, this is my new studio. This is my new home." That video hit over 1 million views in 5 days. Suddenly, I was getting messages from creators, small businesses, even podcast hosts. One woman named Tasha, who ran an online business mentorship program, offered me a free membership. She said she saw potential in me. I accepted. Through that program, I learned about scaling, how to turn my products into digital templates, how to create DIY kits, and how to make passive income. I launched a downloadable bracelet guide for $5. People bought it. Not hundreds, but enough to prove it worked. I added a journaling ebook about independence and healing. That one blew up. I used the extra income to buy heaters, better lighting for my videos, and even a foldable table for making products. My garage didn't look like a garage anymore. It looked like a small office, a creative lab, a space built by pain and purpose. And then, one day, I got an email that made me sit down. It was from a reporter at a national magazine. She said she wanted to feature my story in a column about young entrepreneurs who turned struggles into strength. She ended the email with, "You inspire more people than you realize." I read it 5 times. Me, inspire people. It felt surreal. Just a year ago, I was crying on a mattress with $62 in my pocket. Now people were writing articles about me. But even with all that growth, I still had hard days. Sometimes the orders stopped. Sometimes customers complained. Sometimes the silence in that garage was louder than anything I'd ever heard. Loneliness never really left, it just took different forms. I still hadn't spoken to my parents. Not once. And truthfully, I wasn't sure I ever would. But I knew this. I was no longer that girl begging to be seen at a dinner table. I had created a seat for myself, one that no one could take away. I ended every night with a whisper to myself, "One lie built this, but it's no longer a lie." And somehow, that gave me peace. It had been a little over a year since I walked out of that house. The garage studio had started to feel more like home than anywhere I'd lived before. It smelled like candles and coffee and new packaging materials. My small brand, once just an Instagram page and a few keychains, was slowly becoming something bigger, something real. Every morning, I made a list of goals, and every night I crossed off at least one. I started waking up with purpose, not panic. For the first time, I felt like I had control over my life. Then one afternoon, I opened my email and saw something that made my heart stop. Subject: Carter Family Reunion Invitation. I stared at the screen. I didn't open the email right away. I just sat there, frozen, my fingers hovering over the trackpad. Why now? Why me? 1,000 thoughts ran through my head. Were they reaching out because of the magazine article? Because I had gained followers online? Or did they genuinely miss me? I finally clicked on it. It was short, just a few lines. "Hi, Emily. We're having a small family gathering next weekend. It would mean a lot if you came. Your dad wants to see you. So does your brother. We're proud of everything you've accomplished. Hope you can make it." No apology, no acknowledgement of what happened. Just a casual invite, like nothing ever broke. Like I hadn't been pushed out of my own life and left to survive on my own. I closed the laptop and walked out of the garage. The air was thick and still. My hands were trembling. I didn't know what I was feeling, anger, sadness, maybe both. I wasn't ready to face them, not yet. But something inside me whispered, maybe it's time they see what they threw away. So I replied, "I'll come, but I'm not coming home. I'm coming to show you the home I made without you." The day of the reunion came faster than I expected. I wore my cleanest jeans, a soft white shirt, and a bracelet from my very first batch. I didn't do it to show off. I did it to remind myself where I came from. I took a deep breath and walked into the backyard where the reunion was being held. Tables, snacks, people I barely recognized. A few heads turned. Some smiled. Others whispered. Then I saw my mom. She froze when she saw me. Her smile faded just a little, like she didn't know how to react. My dad was standing a few feet away. He looked older, more tired. My brother waved awkwardly. I didn't cry, I didn't break. I just walked in like I belonged because I did. Not in their world, but in my own skin. "Emily," my mom said, stepping toward me. "You look so grown up." "Thanks," I said calmly. "Turns out life does that to you when you live it." My dad came closer. "We've seen your videos, you've done well." I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to ask why. Why they let me leave. Why no one called. But instead, I just said, "I didn't do it to prove you wrong. I did it because I had to." He nodded slowly. "I know." For the next hour, I sat with cousins and distant relatives. Most of them asked the same questions. How did you start your business? Where do you live now? Are you going to college? I answered everything honestly. I told them about the garage, the diner, the viral videos, the late nights and early mornings. I didn't leave out the hard parts, because I wanted them to understand something very important. I didn't get lucky. I fought for every step. At one point, my brother sat beside me. He looked uncomfortable, like he wasn't sure what to say. "I still have your old guitar," he mumbled. I looked at him, surprised. "The one Grandma gave me." He nodded. "Yeah, I kept it. I don't know how to play it, but I didn't want to throw it away." For the first time that day, my throat tightened. "Thanks," I said quietly. She would have wanted it to stay in the family. As the sun started to set, people began to leave. My dad walked up to me again, alone this time. "I just want to say I was wrong," he said, "about a lot of things." I didn't expect that. He looked down, hands in his pockets. "I thought I was being fair, making room for your brother. I didn't realize what it was doing to you. I should have listened." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, you should have." He looked up, eyes a little glassy. "I'm proud of you, even if you don't forgive me." That hit me harder than anything else. I didn't respond right away. I just stood there, looking at the man who once told me to figure something out as if I was a burden. And maybe I was back then, but not anymore. "I'm not here to fix the past," I finally said. "I'm here to make sure it doesn't define my future." He nodded again, and we left it at that. I walked out of that reunion feeling heavy but clear. I didn't go to reconnect. I went to close a chapter, and I had. That night back in my garage, I made a new bracelet. It was black with silver letters that read, "I did it anyway." I posted a picture of it and told the story behind it, the family, the lie, the struggle, the success. The post went viral again. Thousands of people commented things like, "Same story, different name." This made me cry. "You give me hope." And that's when it hit me. Maybe my journey wasn't just mine anymore. Maybe it was meant to be shared, so others wouldn't feel as alone as I once did. Because healing doesn't always come from forgiveness. Sometimes, it comes from becoming everything they said you couldn't be. The night after the reunion, I didn't cry. I thought I would. I thought going back, hearing those voices, smelling those familiar backyard barbecue scents again would rip something open inside me. But instead, it closed something. Like a door that had been creaking for too long finally shut for good. I lay on the floor of my garage studio, my safe little world, and stared up at the ceiling. My heater was clicking again, a weird sound it made when it was tired but still trying, just like me. I whispered, "We're still here." Business was steady, not exploding anymore but consistent. I had loyal customers, repeat orders. Some of my digital guides were making passive sales, but part of me wanted more, not just money, not just attention, growth, expansion, the next step. I just didn't know what that was. So I did what I always did when I felt stuck. I opened my journal and started writing. I wrote about everything, how the garage was starting to feel cramped, how I couldn't keep packaging orders on the floor, how my back hurt from bending over so much, how I wanted to hire help but couldn't afford to. I even wrote about my grandma again, about how she used to say, "When things feel too tight, you're probably outgrowing the version of yourself you once prayed to be." And that's when I knew. It was time to take the business seriously, like real seriously. The next day, I made a list. 1. Get an actual workspace. 2. Apply for a small business grant. 3. Build a website that didn't crash. 4. Hire part-time help. 5. Create a full product line. It felt insane. I was 18. I had no degree, no connections, no one guiding me, but I had something most people didn't: momentum, and I wasn't about to let it die. I started small, found a local co-working space that rented out tiny studios to artists and creators. It cost $250 a month, which was terrifying, but it had shelves, desks, storage, and a coffee machine. The manager, a woman named June, saw my page and offered me a discount if I'd help her promote the space online. I moved in the same week. Packing orders at a real desk under real lights, surrounded by walls I didn't fear would fall apart, it was surreal. I filmed a video titled, "I Started in a Garage. This is my upgrade." It got shared by a major small business page. More traffic, more sales, more pressure. So I applied for a grant. It was a $5,000 fund offered to young entrepreneurs in tough situations. The form asked everything: background, income, business model, vision. I wrote the truth, every hard word, every broken moment. I didn't sugarcoat anything. A week later, I got the call. "You've been selected," the voice said. "We believe in your story and your grit." I wanted to scream, but instead I just sat there, silent, smiling with tears in my eyes. I had been surviving off tips and Instagram orders for over a year, and now someone was handing me a chance to build for real. With that grant, I did everything on the list. I launched my full product line: keychains, bracelets, DIY kits, journal printables, and even custom quote cards. I hired a part-time packer, Jasmine, a girl from the co-working space who loved crafts and hated college. I built a real website with professional photos and working checkout pages. Things were growing. But with growth came something I wasn't ready for: pressure to scale faster. One day, I got an email from a company that said they could take over all my production and fulfillment. They loved my brand, my story, and my numbers. They wanted to make everything easier for me: package my products, ship them out, even help design new ones. In exchange, I'd give them a percentage of every sale. At first, it sounded like a dream. No more late nights. No more bending over to pack 50 orders. No more runs to the post office. But something didn't sit right. I reread their contract 3 times. It was legal, clean, professional, but cold. Their plan would grow my brand, but in their hands. My voice, my story, my packaging, even my handwritten notes, gone, replaced with a corporate machine. And that scared me. Because I didn't build this for money. I built it because no one believed in me. Because I had nothing. Because I was told to figure something out like I didn't matter. I made this business with my hands, my words, my heart, and I wasn't ready to give that up for easier packaging and a few thousand more followers. So I said no. And that was the first real choice I made as a business owner. Not out of fear, but out of belief. Belief in what I was building. Belief in the version of myself who slept in a diner and never gave up. Belief that even if I failed, I'd fail on my terms, not someone else. That same night, Jasmine and I stayed late at the studio fulfilling holiday orders. We played music, danced between boxes, and laughed until our faces hurt. At one point, she looked at me and said, "You know, you're like ridiculously inspiring. I don't think you even see it." I looked around the studio. At the shelves we'd organized, the lights we'd strung up, the products we'd created. "No," I said. "I do see it, I just never thought I'd get here." And yet I had. The girl who lied at dinner was now living the truth. Not the version others would have written, but the one I built myself. I used to think the hardest part of life was starting with nothing. But I was wrong. The hardest part is almost having everything, then watching it slip through your fingers. It happened in February. Orders were flying in. The new product line was doing amazing. Jasmine and I were packing up to 70 orders a day. We'd even started doing little thank you videos for returning customers. My website traffic had doubled. My income, too. I felt like I had finally reached a place where I could breathe. And that's when everything fell apart. It started with a late-night text from Jasmine. "Hey, the site isn't working. I just tried checking something and it won't load." I checked immediately. The page didn't load. Neither did the store backend. I logged into my hosting dashboard and saw the message. "Account suspended due to security concerns." I froze. I refreshed again and again, but the message stayed the same. My online store, my only way to make money, was gone. I emailed support, I called, I tweeted, I did everything. For 3 days there was no reply, then finally I got a response. "Your site was flagged for suspicious activity after a high-volume traffic spike. It triggered an automatic suspension. We are reviewing the case." I couldn't believe it. I had gone viral again on TikTok a week earlier. A video about my journey from sleeping in a diner to owning a business. That video had brought in over 100,000 views in 48 hours. And now, that success was the reason my website was locked. I sat on the floor of the studio, staring at the screen, and whispered, "Are you serious right now?" Jasmine tried to stay positive. "It's just a mistake, they'll fix it." But they didn't. The next email came 5 days later. "After further review, your account remains suspended. You can migrate your data before permanent deletion." I read that email 5 times. My chest felt like it was caving in. Not only was my store down, I was losing everything I had built. My customer data, my product listings, my blog posts, my analytics, gone. It felt like I had been kicked back to zero. Like all the work I did for 2 years had been erased in one corporate decision. No warning, no apology. Just a cold shutdown. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I cried once, for an hour, in the bathroom. Then I wiped my face and started over. I opened a new notebook and wrote in big letters. "They can take your platform, they can't take your purpose." And then I got to work. I spent the next 48 hours straight building a new website from scratch on a safer, self-hosted platform. No fancy layouts, no extras, just a product page, a contact form, and my story. I emailed every customer who had ever bought from me. I told them what happened. I gave them the new site. I said, "If you still believe in what I do, I'd be honored to keep creating for you." I didn't know what to expect. But what happened next, it left me speechless. People shared the link. Friends of friends reposted it. Some customers placed double orders just to help out. Strangers sent $5 tips through my PayPal just to show support. Jasmine cried when she saw the messages. "You built a community," she said. "That's what saved us." And she was right. The sales weren't as high as before, but they were enough to keep going, enough to start over, enough to prove that even if I had lost my platform, I hadn't lost my people. Still, I knew something had changed. I wasn't safe anymore. All my growth had been dependent on platforms I didn't own, social media, web hosts, algorithms. And if they could be taken from me overnight, I needed to do something different. So I made a new list. 1. Build an email list, something no one could delete. 2. Start workshops, teach others what I've learned. 3. Diversify, no more relying on one site, one method. 4. Tell the truth, about the crash, the rebuild, the reality. I recorded a video that night. No fancy lighting, no music, just me in my studio, raw and real. I looked into the camera and said, I built something from nothing, twice, and if I have to do it again, I will. Because what I've learned is this: platforms can fail, people can leave, money can run out, but if you don't quit, you haven't lost. That video went viral. Again. But this time, the comments weren't just praise. They were action. People signed up for my email list. They joined my free workshop. Some sent messages saying, I started a side hustle because of you, or I left a toxic job after watching your story. It was like my business had transformed into something more than a shop. It had become a movement. A reminder to every kid who was ever told to figure something out that they could. A voice for every girl who was pushed out of her own home and left to make it on her own. A light in the middle of someone else's darkness. And that felt bigger than anything I could sell. That month was the hardest of my life. Not because I lost income, but because I had to fight my own doubt, my own fear, my own voice whispering, maybe this is it, maybe it's over. But I didn't let it win. Instead, I kept creating. I launched a new product, quote cards based on things I had written in my journals. Things like, build what they told you couldn't. Fall apart, then rebuild louder. You are not what they left, you are what you became. They sold out in 3 days. It wasn't about the products anymore. It was about the message. And that was something no platform could ever delete. So no, I didn't give up. I just got smarter, stronger, and even more stubborn about protecting what I built. Because the girl who once lied at dinner and said she had a house, she now had something better. A foundation. One built on truth. 2 years. That's how long it had been since I told my family I bought a house. Back then, it was just a lie at a dinner table, something I said out of anger, out of desperation, out of a need to feel like I had power in a house where I had none. I didn't have a house. I didn't even have a plan, just a sentence and a stubborn heart. Now, I was 20, and I was holding the keys to my first home. Not rented, not borrowed, not imagined. Mine. I stood outside the small white house with the gray roof and the blue front door. A sold sign leaned against the mailbox. My name was on the paperwork. My savings had paid for it. My hands had built the business that made it possible. I looked up at the sky, whispered, "We did it," and smiled. It wasn't a mansion. Just 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and a kitchen that still smelled like fresh paint. But it had sunlight. It had peace. And it had space for everything I had carried inside me for years. Jasmine helped me move in. She carried boxes while blasting music and dancing barefoot on the hardwood floors. "You're officially a homeowner," she yelled, throwing packing peanuts in the air like confetti. I laughed so hard I cried. That night, after everyone left, I sat on the living room floor with nothing but a blanket and a mug of tea. No furniture, no Wi-Fi yet. Just me, the walls, and the silence I had once been so afraid of. Except now, it didn't feel like silence. It felt like freedom. I pulled out my phone and recorded one last video, the final chapter. No script, no edits. Just the truth. 2 years ago, I lied. I told my family I bought a house when I had nothing but a backpack and a broken heart. They gave my room to someone else, and I gave myself a reason to fight. I've worked day and night. I've cried in diners, slept on floors, watched websites crash and orders disappear. I've failed more times than I can count. But today, I walked into a house with my name on the deed. Not because anyone gave me a chance, but because I took one. So if you're watching this and you feel like nobody sees you, this is me seeing you. You can start from nothing. You can fall and get back up. You can lose everything and still win. And sometimes, a lie can lead you to the most honest version of yourself. I ended the video the same way I started this journey. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. Within hours, the video blew up. Not for the views, not for the house, but because people saw themselves in the cracks of my story. I got messages from teens living in cars, from moms rebuilding after divorce, from boys kicked out for being different, from girls fighting to be seen. Each message felt like a thread in a bigger tapestry. This wasn't just my story anymore. It was a mirror for everyone who had ever been told they weren't enough. Weeks passed. I settled into the house slowly, bought furniture one piece at a time, decorated the walls with quotes I used to write in notebooks. My business stabilized again, this time with better systems, stronger roots, and more clarity. One quiet Sunday morning, I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, my dad stood there, holding flowers. He looked older, not just in age but in spirit. "I saw the video," he said quietly, "all of it." I stepped aside, let him in, not because I needed to, but because I was no longer afraid. He looked around the living room, at the photos on the wall, the desk where I now worked, the couch I had assembled myself. "This is beautiful," he whispered. I nodded. "It's mine." He sat down, holding the flowers tightly. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry, not just for that night, for everything." I didn't respond right away. I let the silence sit for a minute. Then I said, "I forgive you, but I didn't do this for your approval." He smiled a little. "I know, that's what makes it even more incredible." We talked for a while, not as father and daughter, but as two people who had failed, grown, and met again on the other side. Before he left, he looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "You didn't just build a house, Emily. You built a life." And he was right. The house was just walls and windows. But the life, that was mine. Built from a lie. Shaped by pain. Sustained by belief. I wasn't the girl at the dinner table anymore. I was the woman who left and came back whole.